The Bridge of the Eternal Supremacy was the finest command center in the known galaxy. Commander Zixatheta stood at its center, his 6 eyes scanning the tactical displays that floated in the air around him. For 3,000 years, his people, the hegemony, had ruled the stars without challenge. Today seemed like it would be just another routine day of maintaining their iron grip on the lesser species. "Commander, we have detected an unknown vessel at the edge of our territory," his second-in-command announced. The creature's crystalline vocal organs produced sounds like wind chimes. It appeared 17 cycles ago and has been broadcasting primitive radio signals. Zixtheta turned 2 of his eyes toward the speaker, while keeping the others on the displays. This was not unusual. Every few decades, some primitive species would develop basic space travel and stumble into hegemony space. They were always given the same choice: submit or be destroyed. Most chose submission. Those who didn't became examples for others. "Show me," he commanded. The main display shifted to show a small vessel floating in the darkness of space. Zixatheta almost laughed. The ship was tiny by hegemony standards, barely 2 kilometers long. His own flagship was 50 kilometers from bow to stern. The unknown vessel appeared to be made of simple metal alloys, with what looked like primitive fusion reactors powering it. Along its dark hull, white letters spelled out words in an alien script. "UES Retribution. Have we translated their signals?" Zixtheta asked. "Yes, Commander. They call themselves humans, from a planet called Earth. They claim to be on a peaceful exploration mission." This time Zixatheta did laugh, a sound like breaking glass that echoed through the bridge. Peaceful exploration in a warship? They don't even try to hide their vessel's military nature. Look at those weapon ports, those armor plates. How amusing. The tactical officer spoke up. "Commander, our scans show chemical-based weaponry and basic nuclear weapons. Their shields, if they have any, are not detectable by our sensors. They pose no threat to even our smallest patrol craft." Zixtheta considered this for a moment. Protocol demanded that any new species be given the chance to surrender and join the hegemony as a servant race. It was more efficient than destroying them outright. After all, new servants meant new resources, new workers for the mines and factories that powered the hegemony's vast empire. "Prepare a standard subjugation fleet," he ordered. 50 ships should be more than enough. Actually, it's overkill for such a primitive vessel, but we must follow protocol. A proper show of force often prevents unnecessary bloodshed. Within hours, 50 of the hegemony's finest warships had assembled around the Eternal Supremacy. Each ship was a masterpiece of technology, equipped with plasma shields that could withstand the heat of a star's surface, and antimatter cannons that could crack a moon in half. They moved in perfect formation toward the small human vessel. As they approached, a transmission came through. The universal translator worked to decode the alien language, and after a moment, words in hegemony standard filled the bridge. "This is Captain Lisa Rodriguez of the United Earth Ship Retribution. We are on a peaceful exploration mission. Please state your intentions." The voice was calm, steady. Zixtheta found it interesting that the human showed no fear. Perhaps they didn't understand what they were facing. He opened a channel, letting his natural superiority color his tone. "Primitive vessel, you have entered hegemony space. You will surrender immediately for processing and integration into our empire. Lower what shields you have, and prepare to be boarded. Resistance will result in your immediate destruction." There was a long pause. The bridge crew of the Eternal Supremacy waited, many of them placing bets on whether the humans would surrender or try to run. None bet on them fighting. That would be suicide. Then Captain Rodriguez spoke again. "Commander, we've been monitoring your communications for the past 2 weeks. We know what you've done to other species. We've seen the slave ships, the mining worlds where entire populations work themselves to death, the planets you've stripped bare." Zixtheta's 6 eyes narrowed. So the humans had been watching, learning. That showed more intelligence than most primitive species, but it changed nothing. Rodriguez continued. "We came to the stars hoping to find friends, allies, maybe even teachers. Instead, we found bullies. I'm going to give you one chance to reconsider your demands. Turn your fleet around and leave us in peace." The bridge of the eternal supremacy erupted in laughter. The sound of dozens of hegemony officers laughing was like a symphony of shattering crystal. The audacity of this primitive species was entertaining, at least. "You threaten us?" Zix Theta asked, genuinely amused. "One small ship against 50 of the finest vessels in the galaxy? Your scans must be malfunctioning. Look again at what you face." "I see 50 ships," Rodriguez replied. "I also see 50 captains who have never faced an opponent who could actually fight back. We humans have a saying. It's not the size of the dog in the fight, but the size of the fight in the dog." The translator struggled with the metaphor, but the meaning came through clearly enough. Zix Theta's amusement began to fade, replaced by annoyance. "Your words are brave, human, but words cannot stop antimatter cannons. You have 1 minute to surrender, or we will disable your ship and take you by force. Many of your crew will die. This is unnecessary." "What's unnecessary?" Rodriguez said. "Is your empire built on the suffering of others? We've studied your history, Commander Zix Theta. Yes, we know your name. We know you've never lost a battle. We know you've subjugated 17 species personally. But you've never fought humans." Zix Theta stood straighter, his chitinous exoskeleton clicking. "And what makes humans special? We evolved on a world that tried to kill us every single day. Predators, diseases, natural disasters, ice ages, and worst of all, each other. We didn't become the dominant species on our planet by being peaceful. We became dominant by being better at violence than anything else we encountered. Then we learned to channel that violence, to control it, to use it only when necessary. This is necessary." The transmission ended. Zix Theta stared at the small ship on his display. The human's words were troubling, but only because they showed a dangerous delusion. Many species thought themselves warriors before meeting the hegemony. None maintained that belief for long. "Commander," his weapons officer reported, "the human ship is doing something odd. They're not raising shields or charging weapons, but there's some kind of spatial distortion around their vessel. Our sensors can't quite read it." "It doesn't matter," Zix Theta said. "They're stalling for time, perhaps hoping we'll just leave. Fire a warning shot. Let them see what they face." The weapons officer nodded and targeted an area of space near the human ship. The Eternal Supremacy's main gun, a weapon that could vaporize a small moon, charged with a high whine that could be felt through the deck plates. A brilliant lance of plasma erupted from the cannon, racing toward the human vessel at near light speed. What happened next would be remembered as the moment everything changed. The plasma beam, which should have passed close by the human ship as a warning, suddenly curved. Space itself seemed to bend, and the devastating weapon that had ended rebellions and destroyed fleets simply went around the retribution like water around a stone. The bridge fell silent. In 3,000 years of conquest, the hegemony had never seen anything like it. "What was that?" Zix Theta's voice carried uncertainty for the first time in centuries. Before anyone could answer, Captain Rodriguez's voice came through again. This time it was harder, colder. "That was your one free shot, Commander. The next one, we return. You want to see what humans are capable of? Keep pushing, but know this, we named our ship Retribution for a reason." Captain Lisa Rodriguez stood in the center of the Retribution's bridge, her hands clasped behind her back. Around her, 300 human crew members worked at their stations with quiet efficiency. There was no panic, no fear, just the focused attention of people who had trained for this moment their entire careers. "Captain, they're recalibrating their weapons," Lieutenant Commander Rachel Murphy reported from the tactical station. "Energy readings suggest they're going to try multiple ships firing at once." Rodriguez nodded. "They want to overwhelm our gravity shields. Let them try. How are our systems holding up?" "All green, Captain," Chief Engineer Paul Chen answered, from his position. "The gravitational field generators are running at 15% capacity. We could maintain this defensive posture for weeks if needed." Rodriguez allowed herself a small smile. The technology that protected the Retribution was deceptively simple in concept, but had taken humanity decades to perfect. Instead of trying to absorb or deflect energy weapons like traditional shields, they had learned to bend space itself. The gravity shields created pockets of curved space-time around the ship, causing incoming attacks to follow the curvature and miss entirely. "Captain," Communications Officer Amy Foster spoke up, "we're receiving transmissions from the alien fleet. They're discussing our defensive capabilities. They seem confused." "Let them be confused," Rodriguez replied. "Kyle, what's your assessment?" First Officer Kyle Patterson looked up from his tactical display. "They're about to make a big mistake, Captain. Their entire military doctrine is based on overwhelming firepower. They've never had to think tactically because they've never faced a real opponent. They're going to throw everything they have at us." Rodriguez walked to the main view screen, studying the massive alien fleet. Each ship was a work of art in its own way, all smooth curves and glowing energy fields. They were beautiful, but beauty didn't win battles. The Retribution was an ugly ship by comparison, all angles and armor plating, but every inch of it was designed for war. "Open a channel to Earth Command," she ordered. The screen shifted to show Admiral Charlotte Baker in the Strategic Command Center on Earth. The Admiral's face was calm, but Rodriguez could see the tension in her shoulders. "Captain Rodriguez, status report. We've made first contact with a hostile force calling themselves the Hegemony, Admiral. 50 ships all armed with directed energy weapons and antimatter torpedoes. They've demanded our surrender." "And your response?" "We demonstrated our gravitational shielding. They fired a warning shot and it curved around us. They're about to try again with more firepower." Admiral Baker was quiet for a moment. "Captain, you have full authority to respond as you see fit. The Security Council has already voted. If these aliens are slavers, as our intelligence suggests, you are authorized to use whatever force necessary to protect humanity's interests." "Understood, Admiral." "Lisa," the Admiral said, using her first name, which she rarely did on official channels. "Be careful, but show them why we spent 50 years preparing for this moment." The transmission ended, and Rodriguez turned back to her crew. "All right, people. We trained for this. We hoped we'd never have to use this training, but here we are. Remember, we're not just fighting for ourselves. We're fighting for every species these bullies have enslaved, for every world they've stripped bare. We're fighting to prove that might doesn't always make right." On the Eternal Supremacy, Commander Zix Theta was struggling to understand what he had just witnessed. His science officers were frantically analyzing the sensor data, but none of their readings made sense. "Commander, it appears they're manipulating gravitational fields," the chief science officer reported. "But the energy requirements should be enormous. Their fusion reactors couldn't possibly generate enough power." "Then they must have some other power source," Zix Theta replied. "It doesn't matter. Whatever trick they're using, it has limits. All shields do. We'll simply overwhelm them. Order all ships to target the human vessel. Full barrage on my command." The 50 ships of the Hegemony fleet spread out, surrounding the lone human vessel in a sphere of death, each ship's weapons charged to maximum power. The amount of energy being prepared could have sterilized a small planet. "Fire," Zix Theta commanded. Space itself seemed to catch fire. Thousands of plasma beams, antimatter torpedoes, and particle weapons converged on the Retribution from every angle. The energy discharge was so intense that it would have been visible from planetary surfaces light years away. But the Retribution danced. The ship didn't just deflect the attacks. It moved through space in ways that shouldn't have been possible. The human vessel would be in one place, then suddenly appear 10 kilometers away without crossing the space between. It would accelerate at rates that should have crushed the crew, into paste, then stop instantly without any deceleration. Space around it folded and unfolded like origami. "Micro jumps," Kyle Patterson announced calmly as he coordinated the ship's movement. "We're folding space to move without actually moving. The inertial dampeners are holding perfectly." The barrage continued for a full minute. When it finally ended, the Hegemony fleet had exhausted enough firepower to destroy a small moon. The Retribution hung in space, completely unharmed. Not a single scorch mark marred its hull. On every Hegemony bridge, silence reigned. This was impossible. No ship could survive that level of firepower, but the evidence floated before them, undeniable and terrifying. Captain Rodriguez opened a channel to the alien fleet. "Are you finished? Because now it's our turn." She turned to her weapons officer, Lieutenant Jake Coleman. Target their lead heavy cruiser single shot from the Graviton Lance. Let's show them what humanity learned when we started playing with the fundamental forces of the universe. Coleman's fingers danced over his controls. Deep within the Retribution, the Graviton Lance charged. This weapon was humanity's masterpiece, the result of decades of research into gravitational waves. It didn't fire projectiles or energy beams. It fired focused gravitational distortions, the same ripples in space-time that colliding black holes created. Weapon charged, Captain. Target locked. Fire. To the watching aliens, it looked like space itself cracked. A visible distortion raced from the Retribution toward one of the hegemony's heavy cruisers, a ship 15 kilometers long and home to 300,000 souls. The cruiser's shields flared as they tried to stop the gravitational wave, but they might as well have tried to shield against gravity itself. When the distortion hit, the cruiser didn't explode. It crumpled. The gravitational forces grabbed the ship and compressed it like a giant invisible hand crushing a tin can. In less than 3 seconds, the massive warship was reduced to a ball of super-dense metal, a third of its original size. Everyone aboard died instantly, their bodies compressed along with their ship. Direct hit, Coleman reported unnecessarily. Everyone could see what had happened. Rodriguez felt no joy in the destruction. 300,000 beings had just died. But they had been part of a fleet that had come to enslave humanity. They had made their choice. Deploy the drone swarm, she ordered. From hidden ports all over the Retribution's hull, 10,000 small objects launched into space. Each drone was no bigger than a basketball, but they moved with perfect coordination. They spread out in a vast sphere surrounding the entire hegemony fleet. Captain Rodriguez to Alien Fleet, you are now surrounded by our tactical drone network. Each drone carries an antimatter-catalyzed nuclear warhead with a gravitational focusing lens. In simple terms, we can create 10,000 miniature suns inside your shields. You've seen what one of our weapons can do. Do you really want to see what 10,000 can accomplish? Back on Earth, crowds had gathered in Times Square in London and Tokyo, in every major city. The encounter was being broadcast live. Humanity was holding its breath, watching as one ship with 300 souls stood against an empire that had ruled for 3,000 years. In her apartment in New York, a little girl named Sophie watched the screens with her parents. "Why, don't the aliens just leave?" she asked her mother. Her mother hugged her close. "Because, sweetheart, bullies never expect their victims to fight back. They're learning that humans are different." Back in space, Commander Zix Theta stared at his tactical display. One ship had destroyed one of his heavy cruisers with a single shot. One ship had deployed enough drones to destroy his entire fleet. One primitive-looking vessel had just changed the balance of power in the galaxy. "Commander," his second-in-command whispered, "what do we do?" For the first time in his long life, Zix Theta didn't have an answer. The hegemony had ruled through. Fear and superior firepower. Now they faced someone who didn't fear them, and whose firepower defied understanding. Captain Rodriguez's voice came through the communication system again. "Commander Zix Theta, you have 60 seconds to order your fleet to stand down. After that, we will disable every ship you have, and you'll drift here as a warning to others who think they can enslave free species. The choice is yours." The 60 seconds felt like 60 years to Commander Zix Theta. His 6 eyes moved between the tactical display showing the drone swarm and the compressed wreckage of what had been one of his finest warships. 300,000 of his people, gone in seconds. The debris field was so dense it had its own gravitational pull. 30 seconds remaining, his tactical officer announced, voice shaking. Around him, his bridge crew waited for orders. They had never retreated from battle, never surrendered, never even considered the possibility of defeat. The hegemony way was victory or death. But this wasn't a battle anymore. It was going to be a massacre. "Commander, we could call for reinforcements," his second-in-command suggested. "The entire Grand Fleet could be here in 3 cycles." "And then what?" Zix Theta asked. "We send 1,000 ships against an enemy that treats the laws of physics as suggestions. Did you see how their ship moved? They were folding space itself. Their one ship has already deployed enough weapons to destroy us all." 20 seconds. "The Retribution," Captain Rodriguez watched the countdown timer. She didn't want to destroy the alien fleet, but she would if necessary. Humanity had spent 50 years preparing for this moment, ever since they had detected the first alien radio signals and realized they weren't alone in the universe. "Captain," Science Officer Maria Gonzalez called out, "I'm detecting something interesting. The alien commander is accessing historical files. He's looking at records of previous first contacts." "What's he finding?" Rodriguez asked. Every single one ended the same way. The new species either surrendered immediately or was destroyed. There's no record of the hegemony ever retreating or losing a battle. Rodriguez understood. The alien commander wasn't just facing a tactical decision. He was facing the complete upheaval of his worldview. Everything he believed about his species' superiority was crumbling. 10 seconds. "Captain, should we prepare to fire?" Lieutenant Coleman asked. "No," Rodriguez said firmly. "We wait. We give them every possible chance to make the right choice." 5 seconds. Zixa Theta closed 4 of his 6 eyes, a gesture of deep thought among his people. When he opened them, he had made his decision. "All ships," he commanded, his voice carrying across the fleet communication network. "Stand down. Power down weapons and maintain current positions." The relief on the bridge of the Eternal Supremacy was palpable. Several crew members slumped in their seats, tension flowing out of them. Captain Rodriguez smiled slightly. "Good choice, Commander. Now let's talk." She gestured to her communications officer. "Open a video channel. Let them see us." For the first time, the hegemony fleet saw humans clearly. Rodriguez stood in the center of her bridge, surrounded by her crew. They looked remarkably unremarkable. Bipedal, mammalian, no obvious natural weapons like claws or fangs. They looked soft, vulnerable. It made their technological superiority even more baffling. "Commander Zix Theta," Rodriguez began, "let me tell you about humanity. We come from a world we call Earth. It's a beautiful planet, but it's also a killer. Our gravity is strong enough that many species would be crushed just standing on our surface. Our atmosphere has weather systems that can level cities. Our oceans cover most of our world and hide creatures that have lived since before the dinosaurs." She paused, letting the translator work. "We evolved on this death world not by being the strongest or the fastest, but by being the smartest and most adaptable. We learned to use tools, to work together, to turn our weaknesses into strengths. And most importantly, we learned that the best way to survive wasn't to destroy our enemies, but to turn them into friends." Zix Theta listened, trying to understand this alien philosophy. "You speak of friendship, yet you carry weapons that can destroy entire fleets. An old Earth leader once said, 'Speak softly and carry a big stick,'" Rodriguez replied. "We prefer peace, Commander, but we're very, very good at war. Do you know why we're so good at it?" "Enlighten me," Zix Theta said, genuinely curious despite his defeat. "Because we've been practicing on each other for our entire history," Rodriguez said. "We've had thousands of wars, large and small. We've developed weapons that could end all life on our planet, and we came terrifyingly close to using them. But we learned. We grew. We realized that our greatest strength wasn't our ability to destroy, but our ability to create, to cooperate, to find common ground with those different from us." She walked closer to the view screen. "Your hegemony has ruled through fear for 3,000 years. You've never had to innovate because you've never faced a real challenge. We've been challenging ourselves every day for millions of years. That's why one of our ships can hold your entire fleet at bay." "So what happens now?" Zix Theta asked. "You've defeated us. By hegemony law, you have the right to take our territory, our resources, our people as slaves." Rodriguez shook her head. "That's your way, not ours. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to return to your hegemony and deliver a message. This sector of space and any species within it are under human protection. Any ship that comes here with hostile intent will face the same choice you just faced. Leave in peace or leave in pieces. And if the hegemony sends its entire grand fleet, 1,000,000 ships?" Rodriguez smiled, and there was something in that smile that sent a chill through Zix Theta's organs. "Commander, do you really think we only have one ship?" The Retribution is one of 20 Earth has already built, and we're building more every day. But more importantly, you're thinking about this wrong. You're still thinking in terms of fleet, battles, and overwhelming numbers. She gestured to someone off-screen. The main display shifted to show a star system. This is the Kepler 442 system, about 1,100 light-years from Earth. Watch. In the display, something approached the system's star. It was small, barely visible, but as it got closer to the star, something incredible happened. The star's corona began to shift, to bend, to focus. Within seconds, a beam of stellar material was shooting out from the star like a cosmic flamethrower. We call it a stellar manipulation array, Rodriguez explained. By using gravitational fields, we can turn any star into a weapon. That beam could sterilize planets from 100 light-years away. We have these arrays already deployed in 12 systems. The bridge of the eternal supremacy was deathly quiet. They were looking at a species that could weaponize stars themselves. But here's the thing, Commander, Rodriguez continued, her voice softer now. We don't want to use these weapons. We developed them because we had to be ready for species like yours. But what we really want is to explore, to learn, to make friends among the stars. We want to trade knowledge and culture, to share art and music, to learn from each other. You would trust us? Zixa Theta asked. After we tried to enslave you? Trust? No, not yet. But we're willing to give you the chance to earn it. Your choice, Commander. You can go back and tell your hegemony to continue their ways and eventually face humanity in a war that will devastate the galaxy, or you can be the commander remembered for preventing that war. On Earth, the Security Council was in emergency session. President John Harris watched the live feed from the Retribution with his advisors. She's taking a big risk, Defense Secretary Carl Washington said. If they come back with their full fleet, 20 ships might not be enough. It's not about the ships, Admiral Baker replied. It's about the message. We're showing them there's another way. If we just destroyed them, we'd be no better than they are. Back in space, Zixa Theta made his decision. We will carry your message to the hegemony, but understand, human, that many will not accept it. There will be those who see your mercy as weakness. Then they'll learn otherwise, Rodriguez said simply. We've given you a gift, Commander, the gift of choice. Use it wisely. She turned to her crew. Stand down the drone swarm, but keep them deployed. Let's give our new friends an escort to the edge of the system. As the drones pulled back but maintained formation, the hegemony fleet slowly began to move. They were defeated but not destroyed, humbled but not humiliated. It was a new experience for them. Captain, Kyle Patterson said quietly, do you think they'll actually change? Rodriguez watched the alien fleet departing. I don't know, Kyle, but we've planted a seed. Sometimes that's all you can do. She opened a channel to Earth. Admiral Baker, first contact is complete. The hegemony fleet is withdrawing. No casualties on our side, one enemy vessel destroyed in demonstration. Beginning broadcast of our message to all frequencies. Understood, Captain. Well done. The President wants to speak with you when you return. Tell him I'll be happy to, after my crew gets some well-deserved rest. Rodriguez out. As the Retribution maintained its position, Captain Rodriguez prepared for the next phase. The galaxy now knew humanity existed, and that they were not to be taken lightly. The real work was just beginning. Captain Rodriguez stood before the communication console as her crew prepared the broadcast that would change the galaxy forever. Every frequency, every known communication method would carry this message. It would reach civilizations hiding, in fear, empires built on conquest, and species that had never known freedom. Ready when you are, Captain? Amy Foster said from the communication station. Rodriguez straightened her uniform and nodded. Begin transmission. Her image appeared, on millions of screens across thousands of worlds. Behind her, the bridge of the Retribution was visible, her human crew working calmly at their stations. The defeated hegemony fleet could be seen through the viewports, departing under escort. This is Captain Lisa Rodriguez of the United Earth, Ship Retribution, broadcasting to all spacefaring civilizations. We are humanity, from the planet Earth, and we come in peace. In the depths of space, on a mining world where millions of enslaved beings labored in darkness, workers stopped and stared at the screens. They had never seen anyone stand up to their oppressors. Rodriguez continued, "We seek trade, cultural exchange, and friendship with all species willing to coexist peacefully. To those who live in fear, who have been conquered and enslaved, know that you are no longer alone. To those who rule through force and fear, know that your days of unopposed tyranny are over." On the bridge of the Eternal Supremacy, Commander Zixatheta watched the transmission with his officers. His tactical officer spoke quietly. "Commander, should we jam this signal?" "No," Zixatheta replied. "Let them hear it. Let them all hear it. The galaxy needs to know what we now know." Rodriguez's voice carried across the stars. "We are the children of Earth, a world that tested us every day of our evolution. We survived ice ages that lasted thousands of years. We survived plagues that killed millions. We survived predators, disasters, and most challenging of all, we survived each other. This struggle didn't make us cruel. It made us strong. It taught us that cooperation is more powerful than competition, that diversity is strength, not weakness." In the capital city of the hegemony homeworld, the Council of Supremes watched in their grand chamber. These were the oldest and most powerful members of their species, beings who had ruled for centuries. "This cannot be allowed," one said, slamming a chitinous appendage on the table. "One species cannot defy the order we have built." "They already have," another replied. "Did you not see the tactical data? They compressed a heavy cruiser to nothing. They can weaponize stars themselves. They are not defying our order. They are replacing it." Rodriguez's broadcast continued. "Let this encounter serve as a warning to those who would prey upon others. We split the atom before we cured our common cold. We reached our moon using computers less powerful than what we now carry in our pockets. We have turned warfare into a science and violence into an art form, not because we love it, but because our survival demanded it." The image shifted to show the drone swarm surrounding the hegemony fleet, then the compressed wreckage of the destroyed cruiser. "We extend our hand in friendship, but that hand can also become a fist. We offer you a choice. Join us in building a galaxy based on mutual respect and cooperation, or continue your ways and face the consequences. Choose wisely." The transmission ended, but its impact had just begun. On a space station in neutral territory, representatives of 17 enslaved species were meeting in secret, as they had for decades, dreaming of freedom, but lacking the power to achieve it. The old Yoran ambassador spoke first, his feathers rustling with excitement. "Can this be real? A species that can stand against the hegemony?" "Not just stand against them," the Kalari representative said, her bioluminescent skin pulsing with hope. "They made them retreat. The hegemony has never retreated." "We should contact them," suggested the young Threllan delegate. "Offer our support, our knowledge of the oppressor species." "And if it's a trap?" the Yoran asked. "If the hegemony is using these humans to draw us out?" "Then we die hoping for freedom instead of living as slaves," the Kalari replied. "I say, we take the chance." Back on the Retribution, the response was immediate and overwhelming. Thousands of signals poured in from across the galaxy. Some were threats from various imperial powers demanding humanity submit to their rule instead of the hegemonies. Others were desperate pleas for help from enslaved worlds. Still others were offers of alliance and trade from species that had managed to maintain their independence in the forgotten corners of the galaxy. "Captain, we're getting a priority signal from Earth," Foster announced. "Admiral Baker and the Security Council." The main screen shifted to show the Admiral, and behind her the leaders of Earth's nations. "Captain Rodriguez, the galaxy is responding to your message. We're detecting fleet movements from at least 7 major powers. Some are mobilizing their forces." "Expected, Admiral," Rodriguez replied. "Bullies don't like it when someone stands up to them. What are our orders?" President Harris stepped forward. "Captain, you and your crew have done exceptionally well. But this is bigger than one ship now. We're accelerating the deployment schedule. 10 more ships will be joining you within the week." And our rules of engagement? Rodriguez asked. Defend any ship or world that asks for our protection. Do not fire first unless you detect an imminent threat to innocent lives. But, Captain, if fired upon, you are authorized to respond with whatever force you deem necessary. Understood, sir. After the transmission ended, Rodriguez turned to her crew. Well, people, we've kicked the hornet's nest. Now we see who comes, buzzing. They didn't have to wait long. 3 days later, sensors detected a massive fleet approaching, but it wasn't military vessels. It was a convoy of cargo ships, transports, and civilian vessels. They were broadcasting a simple message. We seek asylum. Captain, I'm counting over 300 ships, Lieutenant Coleman reported. Various species, all civilian configurations. They're running from something. Open a channel, Rodriguez ordered. The screen filled with the image of a creature that looked like a mixture of coral and crystal. When it spoke, its voice was melodious, like wind chimes. Human vessel, I am Harmonizer, fell of the Silicate Collective. Behind us comes the punishment fleet of the Gorvac Empire. We broadcast your message on our worlds, and many chose to flee rather than continue serving. The Gorvac will destroy us for this defiance. We beg for your protection. Rodriguez didn't hesitate. Harmonizer Vel, bring your convoy to these coordinates. You're under human protection now. Captain, Kyle Patterson said quietly. The Gorvac Empire controls 30 systems. Their punishment fleet will be substantial. Then we'll give them a substantial response, Rodriguez replied. She turned to her communications officer. Send a message to the approaching Gorvac fleet. Tell them any attack on these refugees will be considered an act of war against Earth. An hour later, the Gorvac fleet arrived. 200 warships, each bristling with weapons. Their commander appeared on screen, a massive creature with 6 arms and skin like molten rock. Human vessel, you dare interfere with Gorvac justice? These are our subjects. They belong to us. No being belongs to another, Rodriguez replied firmly. They've chosen freedom. If you want them back, you'll have to go through us. The Gorvac commander laughed, a sound like grinding stone. 1 ship against 200? You humans are either very brave or very stupid. Neither, Rodriguez said. We're teachers, and class is about to begin. She cut the transmission and turned to her crew. All stations, prepare for combat. Let's show them why 1 human ship is worth more than their entire fleet. The Retribution moved forward, placing itself between the refugee convoy and the Gorvac fleet. The drone swarm deployed again, but this time they formed a different pattern, creating a web of interconnected gravitational fields. Captain, they're charging weapons, Coleman reported. Let them fire first, Rodriguez said. We need the galaxy to see who the aggressors are. The Gorvac fleet opened fire, 200 ships unleashing their fury at the lone human vessel. But this time, the Retribution didn't dodge or deflect. Instead, the drone network activated, creating a gravitational lens that caught the incoming fire and redirected it back at the attackers. The Gorvac fleet found themselves being struck by their own weapons. Now, Rodriguez commanded, show them what happens when you attack those under our protection. The Retribution's weapons came alive. Not just the graviton lance, but systems the hegemony hadn't seen. Particle beams that ignored shields by vibrating through higher dimensions. Missiles that created miniature black holes on impact. And from the drone swarm, 10,000 pinpricks of light that turned into miniature suns. In 30 seconds, 50 Gorvac ships were destroyed or disabled. The refugee convoy watched in awe, as 1 human ship dismantled a fleet that had terrorized them for generations. 6 months had passed since the Retribution's first encounter with the hegemony. The galaxy had changed more in those 6 months than in the previous 1,000 years. Ambassador Daniel Wright sat in the newly constructed Galactic Council chamber, on the neutral station orbiting Kepler 442b, looking across the table at representatives from 43 different species. The station itself was a marvel of cooperation. Humans had provided the gravitational stabilization technology, the Silicate Collective had grown the crystal structures that formed its framework, and the Yoran had contributed their atmospheric processing systems that could accommodate any known life form. It was a symbol of what could be achieved when species worked together instead of trying to dominate each other. The old order is dead. Ambassador Vexara of the Hegemony clicked, her chitinous form shifting in what Wright had learned was discomfort. Your species has destroyed a stability that lasted millennia. Wright smiled slightly. With respect, Ambassador, we've replaced oppression with opportunity. The only thing we've destroyed is the idea that might makes right. The numbers supported his argument. In 6 months, trade between species had increased by 300%. 17 worlds that had been strip-mined for resources were beginning ecological restoration with human terraforming technology. The slave markets that had operated openly on dozens of worlds had closed. Their operators either fled or arrested. But at what cost? The Gorvak representative growled. They had lost 70 ships in their confrontation with the Retribution before retreating. You humans claim to value peace, yet you've deployed the most devastating weapons the galaxy has ever seen. We've deployed exactly 20 ships, Wright replied calmly. The Hegemony maintains a fleet of 50,000. The Gorvak Empire has 30,000. We're not the ones militarizing the galaxy. We're just the ones making sure nobody else can use their militaries to oppress others. Captain Lisa Rodriguez watched the diplomatic proceedings from the bridge of the Retribution, now permanently stationed at Kepler 442b as the flagship of humanity's small but powerful fleet. The USS Consequence, Reckoning Defiance, and 16 other Earth ships were spread across the galaxy, each one a guardian and a reminder. It's working, Kyle Patterson said, standing beside her. He had been promoted to captain and would be taking command of the newest ship, the USS Resolution, when it arrived next month. The reports from across the galaxy show that conflicts are being resolved through negotiation rather than force. Rodriguez nodded. Amazing what happens when the biggest stick in the room belongs to someone who doesn't want to use it. A communication came through from Earth. Admiral Charlotte Baker appeared on the screen and she was smiling, something Rodriguez had rarely seen in the past months. Captain, I have news. The Cosmic Empire has agreed to peace talks. They're standing down their million-ship fleet. Rodriguez raised an eyebrow. What changed their minds? The demonstration at Wolf 359, Baker replied. When we used the stellar manipulation array to create a controlled solar flare that spelled out peace in their language, visible from 3 of their core systems, they got the message. We could have turned those stars into weapons, but we chose to make them messengers instead. Hearts and minds, Admiral, Rodriguez said. Sometimes the best way to win a war is to show your enemy that you don't want to fight it. On Earth, the changes were just as dramatic. Humanity had gone from believing they were alone in the universe to being the galaxy's peacekeepers in less than a year. The technologies they had developed in secret for 50 years were now being shared, carefully, with species that had proven themselves trustworthy. In New York, Sophie, the little girl who had watched the first encounter on television, was now learning Yoran as her second language in school. Her class had pen pals on a dozen different worlds. The fear and isolation that had defined humanity's early space exploration had been replaced with excitement and connection. At the Galactic Council chamber, a new issue was being discussed. The Threllan ambassador stood, her forearms spread in a gesture of appeal. Honored representatives, we wish to formally request membership in what some are calling the Terran Alliance. We seek not just protection, but partnership. The humans have shown us that strength can be used to uplift rather than oppress. Within minutes, 17 other species had made similar requests. Wright looked at the gathering and saw something that would have been impossible a year ago. Hope on alien faces, expressed in ways human eyes were learning to recognize. Earth will consider all applications, Wright said formally. But understand, membership in any alliance with humanity comes with responsibilities. You must respect the freedom of all sentient beings. You must contribute to the common defense, and you must be willing to share knowledge for the benefit of all. The Hegemony ambassador stood. And if we choose not to join this alliance? If we maintain our own ways, then you maintain them within your own borders, Wright replied. But know that any act of aggression against alliance members or any free species will be met with appropriate response. Back on the Retribution, Rodriguez received a priority message from an unexpected source. Commander Zixa Theta appeared on her personal screen. He had been removed from military command after the failed encounter with humanity, but had become something unexpected, an advocate for reform within the hegemony. "Captain Rodriguez," he said, his 6 eyes focused on the camera. "I wanted to thank you." "Thank me?" Rodriguez was surprised. "For defeating you?" "For not destroying us," Zix Theta replied. "My species had forgotten that strength could be used for anything other than domination. You reminded us. The reforms are slow and many resist, but for the first time in our history, we're questioning whether our way is the only way. Change is hard, Commander, but it's also necessary. Your species has so much to offer the galaxy when you're not trying to conquer it." "Perhaps. I have one question, Captain. Your species had these weapons for 50 years. You could have conquered the galaxy easily. Why didn't you?" Rodriguez thought for a moment. "There's an old Earth story about a man who found a magic lamp with a genie inside. The genie offered him 3 wishes. For his first wish, he asked to be the richest man in the world. For his second, to be the most powerful. But for his third wish, he asked for wisdom. And with wisdom, he realized that his first 2 wishes had made him miserable. Power and wealth mean nothing without purpose, Commander. Our purpose isn't to rule. It's to explore, to learn, to help others become the best versions of themselves." Zixa Theta was quiet for a moment. "Your species is very strange, Captain Rodriguez." "Thank you," she replied with a smile. "We take that as a compliment." As the call ended, Rodriguez walked to the observation deck. Outside, she could see ships from dozens of species coming and going from the station. Trade ships, diplomatic vessels, scientific explorers, and yes, even former warships being retrofitted for peaceful purposes. Lieutenant Coleman joined her. "Captain, remember when we thought we might have to fight the entire galaxy?" "We did fight the entire galaxy, Jake. We just did it with ideas instead of weapons. Although the weapons certainly helped make our point. Do you think it will last?" Coleman asked. "This peace?" Rodriguez watched as a former hegemony battleship docked next to a Yoran science vessel, their crews preparing for a joint expedition to explore the galactic rim. "Nothing lasts forever," she said. "But maybe, just maybe, we've given the galaxy enough time to learn what we learned on Earth. That cooperation beats competition, that diversity is strength, and that the most powerful force in the universe isn't gravity or nuclear fusion, or even black holes. It's the ability of sentient beings to choose to be better than they were yesterday." A message came through from Earth. 10 more ships would be joining the fleet, but these weren't warships. They were exploration vessels, equipped with the same defensive technologies but designed for science and discovery. Humanity was returning to its original mission, to explore strange new worlds, to seek out new life and new civilizations. But now they wouldn't be doing it alone. Ships from 17 species would be joining them, learning from each other, sharing the wonder of discovery. "Captain," Foster called from the bridge. "We're receiving a broadwave transmission. It's being sent to every human ship and Earth itself." "Put it through," Rodriguez ordered. The screen filled with representatives from dozens of species, all speaking in unison through their translators. "Thank you, humanity. Thank you for showing us a better way." Rodriguez felt tears in her eyes, something she hadn't experienced since they'd left Earth. "Record for transmission," she said. "This is Captain Rodriguez. You're welcome, but remember, we didn't save you. We just showed you that you could save yourselves. The galaxy is what we make it, together." As the Retribution hung in space, its ugly, angular hull a stark contrast to the elegant ships around it, Captain Rodriguez thought about how far they'd come. Humanity had ventured to the stars expecting to find the unknown. Instead, they'd found themselves, protectors, teachers, and friends to species they hadn't known existed. The galaxy had fallen silent when humanity arrived, not in fear, but in awe. And in that silence, a new future was being written, one where might served right, where diversity was celebrated and where even the smallest